Good afternoon, everyone. I now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 is approval of minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on March 28, 2024. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. Last call. With 64 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 3 is the FCC report. Professor B, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Shah. I want to begin by explaining why we're having 2 back-to-back special meetings today. This is a little unusual. As you know, the Faculty Senate meeting originally scheduled for April 25th was canceled. This was so that we could have time to discuss the administration's response to the Workforce Reinvestment Resolution at the University Senate meeting scheduled for that day. To deal with the substantial amount of business still before the Faculty Senate, we called this special meeting for today, and this has been on your calendars for a while. On Saturday, April 27th, I received an email from a group of 20 faculty senators calling on the FCC to convene a special meeting of the Faculty Senate to discuss a resolution related to the use of police force in relation to the protests happening on campus. I responded by outlining what were really 2 options to get the resolution before the Faculty Senate. One was to have the FCC consider putting it on the agenda of the special meeting we've already called for today. That's this meeting. The second was to call a special meeting of their own and ask the Senate office to schedule it. So as a reminder, the option of calling a special meeting is available to any group of faculty senators that exceeds 10% of the membership in size, which this group did. The Senate office handles these requests because scheduling depends on the availability of the people involved in running Senate meetings. In the end, the group of senators elected to call their own special meeting, and as it turns out, the time identified by the Senate office as working best was right after the special meeting the FCC had already called for today. And so later on today, we'll go through the somewhat technical exercise of adjourning this first meeting and then immediately calling the second meeting to order. So stick around for the second meeting, please. On a related topic, when we scheduled the original special meeting for today, the president's office indicated there was a conflict with the president's schedule. So it was decided the Senate vice chair would chair today's meeting. However, after all of the events that unfolded last week regarding the protests on campus, I reached out to the president's office to ask if there was any way the president could at least be present to provide an update to the Faculty Senate on those events. This is something the president's office also felt was important, and so the president, though not chairing today's meeting, has made arrangements so that he can attend for a short time to provide an update and to take questions from senators. Next, I'd like to thank all of you who responded to the survey following the last University Senate meeting, asking folks how they felt about the administration's response to the Workforce Reinvestment Resolution. On Friday of this week, I will be presenting results from the survey in a presentation to the Board of Regents, but I wanted all of you to see those first. And so Amber, if you could maybe share the slide that I sent you earlier so folks can see. Okay, can most folks see that all right? Great. So if you recall, there were 2 questions asking senators to provide input using a 5-point rating scale. The first question asked, how satisfied are you with the administration's response to the Workforce Reinvestment Resolution? And as you can see on the graph on the left, a lot of employees were in the middle, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. However, the distributions are shifted toward lower values, indicating greater dissatisfaction than satisfaction. Overall, just 21% of respondents were satisfied or very satisfied with the administration's response. Nearly twice as many indicated they were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. The second question asked, how important to you is it to see greater investment in the workforce as part of the university's next strategic vision and plan? As you can see on the graph on the right, an overwhelming majority of senators believe it is very important that the U's next strategic vision include greater investment in the workforce. So my interpretation of these 2 results, which is informed by the many written comments we also received, so thank you for those, is the following. First, I think there's strong agreement between civil service, P&A, and faculty employees on these 2 questions. Second, I think there's some recognition that the administration's response may have gone as far as it could in a year when both the university presidency is in transition and when the legislature did not fund the U's request for core mission support. At the same time, there's also clear sentiment that the response does not go nearly far enough. And finally, I think the University Senate is expressing a strong forward-looking desire for the U's next strategic vision to align with the idea that investing in people is investing in our mission and our aspirational goals. And these are the take-home messages I plan to share with the board on Friday. Thank you, Amber. You can take the slide down. Thank you for putting it up. In closing, I just want to report that Perry Leo, professor and department head in aerospace engineering and mechanics, has been elected by the FCC to become its next vice chair starting in July. So please join me in congratulating Perry. And that concludes the FCC chair's report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Professor B. Item 4 concerns a proposed administrative policy on Indigenous research. This policy was discussed at the March Faculty Senate meeting. I'll call on Karen Diver, Senior Advisor to the President on Native American Affairs, to give a brief reminder about the proposed policy.
Thank you so much for having me, especially given the need for a special meeting and all of the things you're trying to wrap up before year end. The Indigenous Research Guidelines were developed in response to concerns about tribes in terms of making sure that research professionals are acting in partnership with tribal nations, that tribal nations are aware of what is happening on its homelands and with its peoples, to come up with agreements regarding data usage, and basically to be in good partnership and practice good ethics and community engaged scholarship. One of the things, because of my background with federal policy making and being in touch with those folks, I had heard more about the Biden administration and various federal agencies having tribal liaisons, talking to tribal leaders around data, and was somewhat anticipating that there would be some guidance coming out of federal agencies, especially concerning grant making and providing proof of tribal participation and consent. Now, all of this, as I explained previously, really comports with the way that we behave with good community engaged scholarship. Much like entering a foreign country, you have a host, you make relationships, you follow the norms and customs and laws of the place you are going. No different for tribal nations. The policy outlines really actionable steps on how to create those relationships and provides guidance. And we did see last week that National Science Foundation did come out with the requirement that National Science Foundation grants that involve tribal nations will require proof of consent from the tribal government. So it looks like we are getting to this about in the nick of time. And I'm happy to answer any questions and would ask respectfully for your approval.
We now have a few minutes for discussion before the vote. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand and send a chat to Erin Heath indicating whether you're pro, con, or other. Please do both. Raise your hand and send a chat. I'll defer to Erin to call on people in the appropriate order. Seeing none, we will now proceed to the vote. Amber, please initiate the call of the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 76 ayes and 3 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to continuing to work with all of you as we implement, hopefully, policy as it's approved after the next few steps. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Item 5 is a discussion of recommendations from the Faculty Professional Conduct Implementation Group. Professor Patterson and Shu, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And I think Lynn, slides are up if you're here, I believe, if you want to start off.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you, everyone, for having us here to share some of the work that our group has worked on in the past several months. So the group is the Faculty Professional Conduct Review and Implementation Group. And we are a group with members from throughout the campus. Nat and I, we co-chair this work group. We also have ex officio members from various offices that have experiences, firsthand experience handling faculty professional conduct questions and issues. And a little bit history about this work group and the work that we have been working on. From 2021 to 2023, we had there was a work group like task force, faculty misconduct task force. They did quite a lot of work related to faculty misconduct, and they had their report finalized back in February 2023. And this work group formed last fall, and we have been working on like professional conduct questions, issues based on the recommendations from the last task force. And right now we are in a stage where we are having consultation meetings with governance groups. We have met some of you in other consultation group meetings that we had in the past 2-3 weeks. So happy to see you again. And for some of you that we haven't met yet, here's a time that we really appreciate to get your feedback, your comments. The plan is to finalize recommendations this month and then provide or submit the report to interim president in June. A bit of scope and the reasons for this task, for this work group. So the work group is charged to review the previous task force recommendations and to look at or examine any gaps in the current policies, engaging in consultation, gathering feedback, and hopefully provide an action plan at the end to the president. And one thing to emphasize here is that the work that we have been doing is deeply rooted in recognizing the rights to academic freedom and freedom of speech and expression and academic ethics and responsibilities. On the next slide, like very quickly, we show the important terms, important considerations that we have had when we form our recommendations. And next, we have the 6 recommendations summarized here. And our work group have formed 3 subgroups focusing on addressing these 6 recommendations. The 3 subgroups and accordingly and correspondingly, the 3 key areas that we have been working on are the definitions of the culture and integration, as well as the policy processes. So next, Nat is going to talk about the definitions.
Thank you, Lynn. And I'll just note for thinking of governance that Lynn is the current chair of the UMD Faculty Senate. So our definitions group wanted to have some definitions that were hopefully helpful and make it relatively straightforward too. So our definitions will utilize as the current draft a reasonable person standard, whether a reasonable person in the same or similar circumstances would find the conduct unprofessional in the workplace given the totality of the circumstances. And again, as Lynn referred to before, there are certain faculty responsibilities and expectations still trying to follow academic freedom. And so we thought about really a continuum of unprofessional conduct, kind of in 3 big categories: egregious or unprofessional behaviors that actually there aren't many gaps in. I'll go to that in a second. and they often could result in discipline. And then there's some non-egregious unprofessional behaviors that, you know, just by themselves might be more a cultural thing or a performance thing for that individual faculty member, but if they become a pattern, will be likely become egregious. And then some other that might be more aspirational, the opposite of it, positive conduct, and then the opposite, unprofessional conduct, is generally non-egregious. You might not be able to discipline for, but you still could work on proactively upfront unit culture and performance in those areas. And so in the kind of the far end of the continuum is egregious unprofessional behaviors. You can see them. I'll let you read them again. They're in the book, also in the docket. And most of these, you know, sexual misconducts, physical violence, retaliation, there are pretty good policies for. There are already procedures. We don't feel like there are too many gaps there, but we want to just be explicit what these are. Then here's kind of the middle ground area where we do think there are some gaps. We call these non-egregious unprofessional behaviors, but if they're a repeated pattern, would likely become egregious. You know, a single instance might not be that big a deal, might have some coaching or other kind of stuff, but if it's repeated and continues to happen, and we've heard examples of these where an individual repeatedly emails the whole department and the chair asking for things that are just totally unreasonable and just disrupts everybody else. And, you know, one instance, not a big deal, but if they got a employee performance improvement plan and it continued, it could maybe become egregious. We want to get into swearing, bullying, other things. Again, any one instance, it might not be that bad, but if it's a repeated pattern, even after some intervention, could become egregious. And then some less serious unprofessional conduct that's generally non-egregious. We want to promote the opposite of this. If repeated, maybe occasionally it can become egregious, but usually not disciplinary. But we still want to promote on the upstream side, you know, not having unclear expectations, having clear expectations, giving good feedback, not having lack of feedback, having good communication, not placing others in a bad light, not deliberately overlooking or ignoring others. And again, due to academic freedom and other freedoms, you know, even if these things continue, they might not become egregious, but we still would like to promote the opposite of these behaviors. And then we did want to really respecting academic freedom and other things that can be negativeness, but are important in academia, or not necessarily considered positive or collegial. You know, these things are not generally considered unprofessional behavior unless they clearly, you know, hit one of the other definitions above. You know, generally exercising academic freedom, performance appraisals, constructive criticism, constructive feedback, assertive behavior, disagreement, unpopular statements, debates and expressing differences of opinion, or the passionate expression of emotions, including anger if it's done professionally and respectfully. And back to Lynn and this has to do with the second subgroup we had.
Thank you, Nat. So the second subgroup we have, the subgroup's work focused on climate and reintegration. And for this area, we have two sub areas or subfields. One is that our work group have put together a red folder that provides guides for academic leaders in terms of how to address faculty misconduct and other harmful behaviors. And the second line in this area is like 3 key recommendations, as well as some notes that we'd like to have to go together with the recommendations. So talking about the red folder, so a bit more information about the red folder. Like we have more details on the slides as well as in the report that we are planning on. But a couple of key things here. One is that the guide or the red folder make it clear that academic leaders are expected to take steps to address misconduct reports regardless of how they learn about them. So the expectation is made clear. And the importance of providing a healthy work environment is made clear in the red folder in the guide. And also within the guide, we have 2 key kind of sections in there to help to provide the resources to academic leaders. And one is about the coaching conversations, Nat, if you can next slide, having coaching conversations, and the other is some resources in terms of how to respond to misconduct reports, like under the subtitle responsive actions. So also on the report, we have a list of resources, the links, offices that are able to provide additional information that is on the guide as well. So on this slide here, you can see some kind of a bit more details about the guide that is given to the academic leaders, how to be engaging in those conversations, how to approach those conversations, as well as what some like responsive actions that academic leaders should be prepared and should consider. And the idea behind it is that like some academic leaders, they know quite well already how to handle situations like this. And some academic leaders may not have that existing knowledge and experience or skills. So this guide provides some of the support for that purpose. And in addition to the red folder, we also have 3 recommendations for building healthy work environment and also addressing reintegration. Recommendation 1 is to have training sessions for all department heads and the chairs, and this include all existing department heads and the chairs and new department heads as the grew to be the department head. And this, we already, according to our ex officio members and like some of the colleagues that we have in the work group, that we already have a quite comprehensive system for leadership development. And so this recommendation is to have the training sessions focused on building a healthy climate to be integrated into the existing system. Recommendation 2 is about coordinated communication. The idea behind it is like, like finding ways to reinforce the importance of respectful work environment, providing support to those who are impacted, like what support is available and where they can find the support, to whom they can talk about, their experience and how they can how to move from where they are and getting further support. And also we are thinking like it's important for like fostering more communications between faculty and staff, among faculty, as well as between faculty and the students, in order to foster like mutual understanding and also kind of knowing the importance of having a respectful work environment. And our recommendation 3 goes beyond the leadership training and coordinated communication. It's about grassroots culture building. It takes more than just leadership and communication to build a supportive and healthy working environment. So this recommendation addresses like the grassroots culture building aspect, and one of the recommendation here is to form and develop a peer support group or program so that people can get supported within the work unit and sometime across the unit, addressing some intermediate level of misconducts or professional conduct issues. What goes with the recommendations is some keynotes here or important considerations. We'd like the recommendations to be both reactive and proactive. By reactive, what we mean is like what would happen and what are the consequences of our misconduct. And by proactive, which is the key emphasis of the climate and reintegration group, is to how to build a culture of professional conduct. And the second item here in the notes section is about inclusiveness. We have to be mindful of differences, diversity, equal opportunity, and inclusion. There's a high likelihood of employees from minority group facing accusations of unprofessional conduct. And how about the standards or thinking about what is professional conduct or what is faculty misconduct? Individuals from different cultural backgrounds may have varying perceptions of what constitutes professional behavior. We also recognize that tenure status and faculty tracks may have impact on the dynamics about faculty professional conduct. And the other thing that we wanted to be noted here is like especially thinking about the grassroots culture building. There could be a concern about inequities in service responsibilities for some groups like women faculty or minority faculty, faculty with disabilities, so on and so forth. And next, Annette will talk about the policy process and the procedures.
So then our this subgroup and then our whole group had discussions on, there is the Board of Regents policy on conduct for all university members, and there's also in the tenure policy, there's a number of things about discipline and whether those need to be recommended to be rewritten or redone. And we think really those cover things pretty well, but there still are some gaps on making them actionable on this downside reactive side. Again, we want to really emphasize the proactive part Lynn was just talking about, but especially for a few of these gaps, bullying and other behaviors, we are going to recommend a new administrative policy on faculty misconduct, and they include P&A teaching specialists, et cetera, at this point in our draft. And that, so there'd be a new policy, and for everybody's knowledge, then we'll make our final recommendations to the interim president, then the incoming president will get them, and then decide if to go forward with a new policy. And if there is a new policy, there's a whole policy on maintaining and developing policies. So there would be additional consultation next year. This would not be the final form. It could be very similar or it could change. So we really wanted to do one. And we wanted findings of professional misconduct in this new policy to be reported to a central university database. We'd seen examples of where, somebody's in a graduate program in a different college and maybe in another unit, and sometimes some things are missed. And again, we still want to be careful to recognize academic freedom and freedom of speech. There's some more on that. Again, there's the rights to academic freedom, but there's also obligations, responsibilities, and ethics for faculty. And then we also are going to recommend that faculty will receive training as to this new policy. If it's implemented next year, it will probably take the whole year if it goes forward, on being approved for new faculty upon first being hired during the orientation for all faculty if approved. And then findings of unprofessional conduct could be subject to sanction, more serious sanction if egregious, using the reasonable person standard again. And then just generally is the policy, if there's oral, written, visual, or physical actions by a member of the faculty that has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's employment or educational performance, and or has the purpose or effect of creating an intimidating, hostile, etc. climate, that's what could be actionable as potentially egregious, using that continuum we referred to before as an appendix to this policy. But this would be the main policy statement about behavior. And that's it for our presentation. We're now open to questions, comments, clarifications.
Thank you, Ned, and thank you, Lynn. The floor is now open for discussion. Once again, if you have a question or comment, please both raise your hand and send a chat to Erin, indicating whether you are pro, con, or other. And also please refrain from sending other chats to Erin so she can focus on this task. She'll call on people in the appropriate order. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me. First, we have Jerry Cohen, but Jerry, I need to know if you are pro or con.
Probably faster just to say other.
Okay, go ahead.
So Ned and Lynn, last time when we were discussing this, I asked a question. And first of all, I should say I'm Jerry Cohen, CFANS, and a member of the Senate Judicial Committee. I asked a question which is still relevant and I don't think was addressed, and which is how do you envision misbehavior by academic leaders, that is department heads, deans, provosts, presidents, whatever, in the context of this? Because I know from the many things that I have seen while on the Judicial Committee, for example, that misbehavior is not limited to assistant professors. It's a two-way street. that oftentimes you have misbehavior by department heads and deans and others who do not engage in polite civil discourse. And it seems to me that this is a top-down analysis of that, and that is dangerous in an academic environment because it provides a real dampening of academic freedom in that case. So that's it.
I guess I can take that if we want to go to answer questions one at a time. Rachna, yeah, we have discussions on that. We're still working on the final scope exactly, and it would apply to administrators when they were doing their faculty jobs. We are having continuing discussion on should this apply to all P&A, which that's where most administrators are also, and whether we say we recommend it does. If we don't say that, I think we're going to recommend that further policies be looked at for P&A and civil service also similarly, but it wasn't our original charge. Our original charge had to do with faculty, but we have not finalized those final recommendations on scope. But on the other hand, when I've talked to HR in my college and others, I mean, administrators, there are processes to report administrators. Maybe not everybody trusts them, and that they don't even have academic freedom in their administrative jobs. So they, in some ways, have a lower bar to misconduct depending on the process, because they're at-will employees as administrators, whereas there's protections for faculty. But we're still discussing the scope, and I think, you know, we at a minimum will probably recommend that similar things be looked at for all academic professionals and civil service employees for gaps, et cetera, because it wasn't our original charge, or it's a possibility we might say this applies. We're recommending this apply to all academic P&A academic professionals, and that would include administrators.
Okay, next, since we are doing either pro-con or other con, I am going to go a bit out of order and call on Sumanth Gopinath, who has expressed interest in expressing a con opinion. Sumanth, please introduce yourself to the committee and go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. Hi, I'm Sumanth Gopinath. I'm in the School of Music in the College of Liberal Arts, and I am substituting for Tetsuya Yamada in art. I heard a version of this proposal in the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, on which I serve as a member. I'm also the current president of our AAUP, American Association of University Professors campus chapter. I have a few sort of major concerns about the way this policy is shaped. One of them was the one that Jerry Cohen outlined, which is that the unevenness of how this works. I think respectfully, Ned's answer is unsatisfactory, because if administrators may be at-will employees from the top, but they are not from the bottom. And it's at the bottom where we see often, or at least we have seen in Academic Freedom and Tenure, policies of a much more limited sort being used to essentially try to hound faculty into retirement, or otherwise, sort of threaten them in various ways. And I'm speaking specifically of the post-tenure review process and performance improvement plans. And again, that is a much more limited scope in terms of how that happens. In contrast, this policy is extremely wide-ranging and expansive in terms of what it sort of sets up as a possibility for termination. And I guess in relation to the possibility of administrator abuse, which I think is rare, but I think it does happen, we've seen it in our committee, is just the sort of slipperiness of the definitions. I think the reasonable person standard is slippery and gives
30
me
seconds remaining.
I would say the in-between category of egregious seems questionable to me. If something really is a problem, it should maybe just be well-defined enough to be a problem that is egregious. And yeah, I'll stop there. But I guess the third thing I would say is that the full spectrum of punishments that's laid out all the way up to termination also gives me cause for alarm. And in terms of the potential for abuse, I guess that's the main thing I want to hit home. I think there's great potential for abuse with this policy as it is currently defined.
Okay, so thank you. And next we have Ellen Messer-Devoto. Ellen, you are, it looks like other, so please be recognized by the committee and go ahead.
Thank you. I would like clarification in a kind of detailed way of what might constitute unclear expectations with respect to students' feelings about faculty. I'm asking because I've had this conversation with several colleagues during the COVID remote teaching period. Many students were very confused and they blamed their professors for their own confusion, no matter how much the professor or instructor tried to help. This fall, an Israeli colleague, faculty member, was the target of complaints by a Middle Eastern student. And the Middle East situation was not discussed in class. And the professor consulted me. She did not do anything wrong or out of line. And the student complained about teaching, that, it was unclear, it was unprepared. So it was an excuse for some other kind of hostility. The third type of conversation I've had, and I've actually experienced, is students who don't really read the syllabus. And we don't read it to them the first day because that's considered boring. It's not good practice. And so then they'll email. And we'll refer them to the syllabus on that point, and we'll quote it in the email, and we'll ask, do they get it now? Do they understand it? And then they'll write on their student evals, well, the professor didn't give good directions or whatever. So I am very concerned about what constitutes unclear expectations and how the department chair would have to deal with that.
Lynn, do you want to take it on, or I can? It's up to you.
Yeah, I can say a couple words since the red folder talks about expectations for the department head, like addressing the accusations of misconduct. Like, I really appreciate, Alan, that you shared with your experience, the students' questions and their views of points and the faculty's viewpoints. I do think there's a kind of a big need in the room for that speaks to the coordinated communication. Because a lot of time it's not necessarily the faculty should do the communication. There should be more kind of, faculty certainly is part of the big picture, but there need to be more communication to the students and involving the faculty, what is needed and what is related to faculty's responsibility and what is the student's responsibility. So making those things clear would help to build the common understanding, and hopefully that help to build a more build more transparency, as well as more kind of a healthy environment for both students and faculty. And talking about expectation for the department chairs or academic leaders, the red folder provides some of the guidance, but we also recognize that not everything is in there, and we certainly need more support for the academic leaders, when we make clear about expectations, what have to go with expectations is resources, is support. So that is the other aspect of the recommendations that we are planning to provide. That is to provide additional support, resources, as well as training sessions or workshops to academic leaders to make it clear, what are those expectations and how to deal with different situations in that, like in different scenarios.
And if I can just add, I mean, I think the unclear expectations in the definitions came from the graduate task force on misconduct with unclear expectations to graduate students. And again, I think this is in that very early in that continuum. It would be the reasonable person standard. You know, we didn't want to have a paragraph definition of every single thing. What a reasonable person consider unclear expectations. And those examples you had to me, I don't think a reasonable person would necessarily consider unclear in the first place. And even in the second place, if they we're trying to more the proactive, have good communication, prevent it in the first place. And then even if it did happen, these are ones that are in that category that probably couldn't be disciplined. There could be at the chair's discretion, some coaching on better communication, you know, so that's really.
Well, you know, like Sumant, I'm concerned about, what kind of process the faculty member becomes entangled in if there's a student complaint that really isn't, as you say, Ned, reasonable. It still takes time. They still have to provide all kinds of documentation. And I know that's happened in various departments. And so I'd hate to see everybody mired down in process. And so maybe your committee could think about some concrete examples. Okay, if a student complains about X, what then would be the process going forward for these minor infractions or unclear explanations? Because you don't want the faculty member spending the whole semester over, a complaint that has no basis.
Yeah, thank you for those comments in the previous ones. And when we met with AF&T at our next group meeting of the whole group, we're going to really look at carefully the current draft and try to look for any potential abuses or where people think could slip through the cracks. So this discussion is all helpful.
Thank you, Ned. Given the time, we will call on Julia and Michael, and after that, we will have to stop the discussion. Erin, please call on the person and please announce yourself and recognize yourself to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Michael Galope. Michael, please go ahead. He is other.
Thanks, Erin. I guess I'm other because I'm a department chair. I'm in CLA and I'm chair of cultural studies and comparative literature. We teach about 3,000 students a year. So I think about work environment quality all the time. It's a huge part of my job. I have very serious concerns about this policy being abused. I think I mean, it went by very quickly, but what's qualified as egregious, I think is quite broad. I worry about the abuse of the reasonable person standard. Something like the disability accommodations. This is something obviously with 3,000 students we have to deal with in a lot of different ways. There are legal issues with that. I mean, the faculty member has intellectual freedom over their syllabus and the learning outcomes and evaluating the learning outcomes. And they are part of, at the other end of an interactive process with the students. So I'm worried about how a process like this could potentially provide on-ramps for faculty, for complaints about faculty. And we are not alone in the university for teaching controversial material or material that students may deem controversial, the public may deem controversial. This is why the academic freedom protections are there. And I think most of the language that I saw in this presentation is too broad. I just worry that and I think frankly, the threat of discipline is not a very good incentive for a good work environment. In fact, my experience is that threats of discipline, collegiate, department, or university level tend to actually corrode work environment quality and learning environment quality. And that it really has to be done positively through modeling and through trust. So I'm mixed because
30 seconds remaining.
Ideals, but I do not support this. And I also would ask a specific question is whether the Senate Judiciary Committee has been consulted about this policy.
First answer is yes, there was a conversation with the Senate Judicial Committee. And again, this is not a policy yet. It's just a recommended blueprint for a policy. It would have to go through the, if it went forward, the whole policy process again next year with additional consultation, where there could be, you know, additional changing the language, et cetera. And even before we finalize it, appreciate the comments. Feel free to email Lynn or I any specific comments of suggested changes or places you think it could be abused, because it's not final yet.
Okay, and then our final person is Julia Lujan. Julia is also other. Please introduce yourself to the committee and go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Julia Lujan, and I'm a PNA faculty senator in CLA. And my question is regarding your note on implications regarding tenure track and PNA faculty. And I would like a clarification first when you think of faculty, if PNA faculty is included in that terminology. And if it is, I would like it to be explicitly addressed, because I think PNAs are in this gray area where they could be considered staff, but PNA, instructional PNAs have a lot of the same responsibilities and work under academic freedoms just as tenure track faculty. So I would like that clarified and explicit on these suggestions. And then I would like, not today, but in the future, to think further about those implications and think that the relationships of power between tenure track faculty and instructional PNAs are so complicated and complex that just being aware that that is a problem, or that it could potentially raise problems, I think is not enough. I think that there has to be more development in that area, and even perhaps have more specific recommendations regarding this power dynamics within all of our departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and at this point in the draft, we're still finalizing scope, but we were at this point intend to have PNA lecturers, senior lecturers, instructors, et cetera, included when they're doing the faculty work. You know, just like you are a faculty senator, you know, doing the faculty work is the same in our mind for everyone. But we ought, in that power differential, do think about both that, the PNA and the contract faculty. You know, we're on annually renewable contracts, both in power differentials compared to tenure system faculty. So we've discussed all those things. We want to be relevant in this policy. And a separate task force I ran, we did start a subcommittee of the Faculty Affairs Committee of the Senate on term or contract faculty and academic professionals in those same categories. That helps also look at these issues and would be consulted if this policy was going forward next year.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ned and Lynn, for this discussion. I now turn the floor over to Professor Goodnow to chair this item.
Thank you, Rachna. Item 6 is approval of the Faculty Senate officers for 2024-2025. On behalf of the FCC, I nominate these individuals to continue their officer duties for the next academic year. A simple majority is required to approve. Amber, would you please initiate the poll?
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 91 ayes and 2 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 7 is approval of Twin Cities slate of candidates for the FCC. I'll ask Professor Flaherty Manchester to present this item.
Thank you, Rachna. So hello, Colleen Flaherty Manchester, Senator and FCC member from the Carlson School, Twin Cities campus. So I was the chair of the nominating subcommittee. We met several times over the past few months and kind of followed up on nominations received from the Twin Cities faculty at large and a call for nominations, and were able to confirm these 6 faculty members for the 3 positions or openings for FCC. And so once these individuals are approved, then you will receive an opportunity to vote electronically, and that message will come from the Senate office.
Are there any questions or comments?
Looks like maybe there's one question.
Jerry?
So if I read this correctly, your mandate is to come up with a balanced slate of candidates for the FCC. And so I'm a member of the faculty in CFANS. The last time I looked, this was a land-grant university. Land-grant universities have a mandate to work in multiple kingdoms of study. And the current FCC and the slate that's proposed is devoid of the plant kingdom. And you cannot have an agricultural university without plants. You cannot feed animal agriculture. You can't feed humans without plants. And so I question how you're going to have a legitimate representation of the faculty of this university, which is a land-grant university, without having a single plant scientist on the FCC. And I just want to bring that up. Maybe you have an answer to it, maybe not. But we have a similar lack of the plant kingdom within our administration. And I think it's a horrible situation. But certainly within the faculty, we can have somebody green. And I just find it to be immensely disconcerting that nobody even thought about that. So just add it to your list of complaints.
Thank you for expressing that concern and question. So in terms of the elected members of the Twin Cities group, we have a total of 9 positions. And so we came up with, we were very much thinking about how the FCC could satisfy its charge of representing all of faculty. And so we actually did a lot of work trying to figure out different representation, but also we're constrained as well. But in terms of trying to get broad representation, we were thinking about colleges, we were thinking about campuses, we were thinking about backgrounds. And I will note that the plant aspect that you're focusing on for the work next year. And I think in the meantime that we'll have multiple members from the College of Biological Science on FCC, as well as CFANS through ex officio members.
Thank you, Colleen. We will now proceed to vote. No second is needed. So and please note this vote is for Twin Cities faculty senators only. A simple majority is required to approve. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 77 ayes and 9 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 8 concerns charge changes for the Faculty Advisory Committee for Health Sciences. I'll call on Professor Rob Jones to present this item.
Yeah, thank you for hearing us. I'm Rob Jones, co-chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee for the Health Sciences. My co-chair is also present, Dr. Pavel Moroz. And we wanted to present to this committee a few changes to the charge. Before I kind of present the details, I just wanted to give a timeline. Over the last couple of years, we've had to make changes as the health sciences has kind of reorganized, and we've attempted to over the years include a more broad representation by adding the Rochester campus and to the Faculty Advisory Committee. And we also had to deal with some of the issues that there was some consolidation within the Academic Health Center, including the allied health membership. That would be allied health, occupational therapy went into the College of Pharmacy. So early this calendar year or academic year, we approached the FCC with some proposed changes. We wanted to formalize a co-chair structure, and I'll get into really quick why we needed to do that, and also allow each individual school or college to elect a individual that represented their school. So we approached the FCC with some of these changes. We made some amendments. We went back to the FCC and also COMC and got this approved. And kind of the two notable things is kind of getting back to what we do as a committee. We consult a lot about clinical systems, clinical affairs, clinical teaching. So we work with the Vice President for Academic Health, the Office of Academic Clinical Affairs. We engage the student leaders in the health sciences regarding clinical education. And very unique this year, we've added some interaction with the Special Committee on Academic Health, which is a special committee of the Board of Regents. And in all of these kind of duties, we are asked a lot of questions about patient care and how certain university policies might affect that. So we wanted to make sure that we formalize our co-chair structure to include somebody in that clinical track role that's probably doing much more clinical teaching than many of our tenure track faculty. And lastly, we wanted, again, to allow that co-chair structure to account for the fact that many of us in the clinical sciences are on block schedules. And so our interaction with University FCC or some of these other committees at the university, our leadership is sometimes not available because we're in clinical care. So our other co-chair can kind of take over that role. So those are the main changes. I can take any questions. I'll let Dr. Moroz weigh in if he has any additional thoughts.
The floor is now open for discussion. Once again, if you have a question or comment, please both raise your hand and send a chat to Aaron Heath, indicating whether you're pro, con, or other. Seeing no questions or comments, we will now proceed to vote. 76 votes are required to approve. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A couple more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 82 ayes and 3 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 9 concerns administrative policy, open access to scholarly articles. If there are any questions or comments, Professor Ann Barnes is here to answer them. Hearing none, a simple majority is required to approve. Amber, please initiate the poll for administrative policy.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 82 ayes and 2 nays, this motion carries.
The next item, item 10, concerns administrative policy, creating and evaluating centers and institutes, and is presented for information. Next, item 11 concerns academic calendars for the Morris campus for 26-27 and 27-28. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, a simple majority is required to approve. All faculty senators participate in this vote. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 84 ayes and 3 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 12 concerns a proposed new administrative policy on academic credit for courses associated with internships and co-op experiences. Katie Russell, Director of Undergraduate Policy and Curriculum Administration, is here to tell us about the policy. Katie, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm joined by Leslie Schiff, the Associate Dean for the Undergraduate Curriculum, and also my colleague Jessica Keeker-Grochon in case there are questions. May I share my screen? I put together a few slides.
Yep, that should be fine.
Okay. So you have access to the full draft policy in the agenda, but we wanted to put together a few slides to highlight the changes because highlight this new policy. This policy focuses on Twin Cities undergraduate students and internship and co-op experiences impacting that population. So we've been in our office for the past decade that I've been here. We get questions frequently from colleges around internship courses, and we've tried to give the best answers that we could, but without a policy guiding, it was difficult to be consistent. And so we began working on a policy in earnest in October of 2021, after being approached by colleges, identifying some inequities around international students needing to register for internship credit when our continuing students weren't. And so our non-international students were not. So that was really the final push for us to be focusing on this policy. So you can see we started consulting and developing in 2021 and are happy to be here with a proposed draft. And this is the policy statement, really the meat of the policy, that students can take up to 3 academic credits toward an internship course. So a course could be offered for 1, 2, or 3 credits for students to enroll in. The academic credit is commensurate with the content and instructional time in the academic course, as opposed to the number of hours a student is spending at the internship. One critical piece of feedback we received throughout consultation is that we cannot separate the experience from the course. It's almost as if the internship experience could be considered the textbook. So based on that feedback, we revised the proposed policy to reflect that the internship experience can count for up to 2/3 of a student's out of class time. So in addition to assignments for the class, reflections, writings, readings, the time at the internship site is also counting toward the student out of class work time that makes up an academic credit. The academic expectations of an internship or co-op must be documented in the course syllabus and reinforced in a contract or agreement. And the academic course must have an instructor who is not also the internship or co-op supervisor. This policy is really leading us toward uniformity of expectations for an academic credit for courses associated with internships and co-op experiences. And it also allows for compliance with federal financial aid regulations and accreditation requirements around the credit hour. So this table we developed, and this is also in the policy under FAQs, was intended to illustrate what that looks like when we say 2/3 of a student's 2/3 of the out-of-class work time might be time spent at the internship. It doesn't have to be. That's really up to the instructor of the course, but it could be. So this breaks that down. So for a 1-credit course, that means 15 hours of instructional time per term, which equates to approximately 30 hours of student out-of-class academic work per term. And of that 30 hours, 20 hours may be hours spent at an internship site over the course of a term. We know students are likely going to spend more time than that at an internship, and we hope that they do, and we also hope that they are paid for that experience. So this policy also supports students being paid for an internship and then receiving academic credit for the work and the university deliverable that they're doing in that class. We received some feedback when the draft policy went up for public review and some feedback from SCEP, so we wanted to highlight that here. Most comments were concerns from graduate programs, so we've clarified that this is indeed an undergraduate policy. That has been the intent. Learning abroad, there were questions from the public whether learning abroad was given special consideration. And yes, indeed, we've added an FAQ to make that clear. But due to the additional components of a student going abroad and the cultural learning that's happening, learning abroad internship courses that take place in other countries are limited to 4 credits as opposed to 3. Questions about international students and CPT, and yes, we have consulted many times with ISSS and they've been providing feedback and are aware of this policy moving forward. And then finally, there was concern that the policy establishes a requirement for departments to offer an internship course. That was never the intent. So just to be completely clear, we've added an FAQ to clarify that internship courses are offered where it makes sense within the curriculum and/or disciplinary field, not in response to this policy. Are there any questions?
And if so, please raise your hand and send a chat to Aaron Heath indicating whether you're pro, con, or other. Thank you, Katie. I see no questions. A simple majority. Oh, Matthew, did you have a question?
Sorry, I haven't figured out how to use my.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead.
Use my hand. Does this apply to professional schools like the law school? I'm from the law school, and I'm just wondering if this applies just to undergraduates or if it applies.
It does not apply to the law school, undergraduates only.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we do have one person, Terry Caraway is con. Terry, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm Terry Caraway. I'm a senator from the College of Liberal Arts in the Department of Political Science. And I'm director of undergraduate studies, and the internship program that we've had in our department for at least 40 years has been really integral to the major. And our internship director, Paul Soper, says that this policy is going to kill our internship program. So I am against it.
Thank you. And although there was not a question, may I comment?
For sure.
Okay. We have a meeting planned with the Department of Political Science, and I know, and we've worked very closely with the College of Liberal Arts in the development of this policy. I think that is documented in the consultation tracker, which I believe was made available here, but we've been working very closely with the College of Liberal Arts, and my understanding is that there have been conversations with the previous political science leadership, and so I think we are running into a challenge with the time and the consultation that went into developing this policy and ensuring that it met the needs of departments. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation to looking at how, and we've talked about runways, that it's not as if a switch is flipping, and that effective September, every internship course will comply with this as proposed in the policy, that we want to look at how can we best serve students on campus, and that we believe this policy leads us down that path, and we want to be in conversation with departments that are experiencing a point of change and tension.
Well, I just want to correct one thing that you said. We have not had change in leadership in these positions. Paul Soper has been in his position as long as I've been at the university, which is for more than 20 years. And I've been director of undergraduate studies for 5 years. So it's not a question that we have turnover at the top or the people who are involved in this. So, but I do look forward to working out some sort of compromise that will not get in the way of this program that has been transformative for so many of our students.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying my misunderstanding.
Thank you, Katie. A simple majority is required to approve. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 48 ayes and 29 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 13 concerns updates from the administration. After the update, we will have time for a couple of questions. Interim President Ettinger, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Rushna, and hello, everyone. My understanding of the part of the meeting that I'm here to talk about relates to the activities on campus for the last couple of weeks related to, in particular, the encampments. They're often kind of described and it's clear they're related to protest activities, no question. But in terms of, kind of what spurred the difference in university responsibilities, it's all related to encampment. I mean, we've had protest activities most of the time that I've been here, I'm sure, and for a lot further back, most of you who've been here a lot longer than I have are certainly familiar with that. The three priorities, I guess, in talking about the encampment challenges over the past couple weeks that the administration team, along with the law enforcement professionals, have talked about are, and you can put them whatever order you want, but they're first, to try to maintain safety and avoid violence, avoid violent events against our students, our staff, our faculty, any passerbys or bystanders, or our law enforcement professionals. Secondly, to support free speech, open dialogue, the free exchange of ideas, First Amendment rights. And then third, to seek adherence to state laws or university policies. And on the last one, I mean, neither the UMPD nor the current administration sets the policies, and the policy has been in place and had a variety of reasons why it had been put in place. Indeed, as we're learning, watching events all over the country, lots of institutions have encampment policies for a variety of reasons. So, I've been asked a lot about, okay, so, why did we seem to take one action the Tuesday before last that ended up with the arrest of 9 individuals and a different action last week? The reason that the action proceeded on a week ago, or whatever that is now, I guess 2 weeks from tomorrow, with the arrest that day, was frankly, the confluence of being able to, as best as possible, deliver all 3 of those priorities. That we were notified that an encampment had been set up at 4 o'clock in the morning. The law enforcement team felt that by going to the encampment and requesting the encampment's removal and offering people the opportunities to, hey, you can stay and protest, but you can't have the tents, you can't stay with the tents, and doing it relatively early that day. I believe it was between 7 and 7:30 in the morning when that conversation happened, that there wouldn't be a lot of passerbys, bystanders, other folks that potentially could end up in a situation there. And again, in terms of the free speech part, they all were offered the opportunity to continue any sort of protest activity they wanted to have, as long as they would move away from the tents and not be in violation of the university policy on encampments. So that proceeded in that way. Subsequently that week, there were honestly a lot of sort of back and forth, what I'll call sort of near encampments or encampment efforts or threats or whatever. Some folks have described our campus as having had encampments ever since then. And indeed, in some cases, the protesters literally kind of, encampment day 1, encampment day 2, etc. The net of it was, however, there were no overnight encampments on the campus for the remainder of the week. That did not occur until the following Monday. On that morning, we had, and I had already communicated this in an interview with the Star Tribune the week before, that, yeah, we recognize as the administration that it probably would be helpful to have conversations with folks. We had those in October, and frankly, maybe had been remiss in not being more frequent with that and reaching out and having more conversations. And so we made those offers Monday morning. Subsequent to making that offer in the early afternoon, an encampment was set up with, quite organized, as everybody saw, a lot of material, a lot of folks, etc. that afternoon. We considered the idea of withdrawing the invitation for the meeting on the basis that they were now in violation of the policy, but thought on balance that dialogue was better than not having dialogue, and UMPD agreed that that was worth the effort. In addition to agreeing to the dialogue, the group that responded to the invitation submitted a set of 6 what they call demands, and they can call them whatever they'd like. I mean, we considered them areas of discussion, and they were quite detailed. And so we felt that to do the meeting honor and to be prepared for it. And they also had, by the way, said they were ready to meet anytime, available anytime. And so we looked at that and kind of said, and based on the totality of that we really honestly needed Tuesday to get organized. And so we offered to have the meeting on Wednesday, and we did it indeed on Wednesday at 10 in the morning. Our law enforcement officials felt it was important to continue to basically make notice that, hey, these encampments are in violation of our rules and we're asking you to disperse. And they made those announcements on both Monday and Tuesday evenings, but did not otherwise take action against the protesters, and were fine with the idea of waiting through the meeting. I mean, I'm just here to tell you, I'm glad that the meeting actually did turn out to be a very good dialogue. We were a little concerned when we would read things online that these are our 6 demands, and if they're not all agreed to in full, we're walking out the moment we hear the first no. And then after we sat down with the folks and had a chance to talk a little bit, we learned from them that, they were a little dismayed at, hey, we feel we've been outside your office for 6 months and you haven't come down to talk with us. And then you offer to have a meeting and you give us 30 minutes is what was kind of the official duration of the meeting that had been described or offered. And so, okay, I mean, so to them, it seemed like we were just going to do a check the box. Okay, we met with them and move on. Fortunately, I think both got past that and spent a good amount of time talking, hour and 40 minutes total, and reached a good understanding. Now, I'm sure many of you followed the activities of the afternoon to see there was a little bit of a twist in that day that ultimately was a misunderstanding. I mean, our sense to them was, okay, we had said we'd like the encampment down by 5 o'clock, and what you're looking for from us to really cement that, you can rely on this, was a letter from the Board of Regents chair confirming that they could indeed present at this Friday's board meeting, because they had been given a provisional letter previously. And during our conversation, they had agreed to the provisions that were in that letter. And so I went to work, and we went to work to get that. And then we submitted it to them, and then was kind of noticed that, okay, an hour went by, 2 hours went by, and it didn't seem like anything was happening. And then there was this kind of, we think the administration's lied, and everybody needs to rush back to campus and so forth. And so we immediately endeavored to get a hold of the group again and say, hey, look, can we just talk about what happened here and what's the misunderstanding or whatever? And it turned out that they felt that, no, look, I mean, we talked about all 6 issues, and what we were looking for from you sort of in writing was the response to all 6 issues, not just the regent letter. And, you know, in retrospect, it was actually necessary or probably helpful to go through that process and get the 6 things all written out, just so we didn't have any further misunderstandings. We also, during that dialogue, agreed that, hey, look, I mean, we're going to do our best effort to summarize what we understand to be the 6 items, and we're going to send them to you folks. But if you don't agree, just let's have another Zoom. Let's not immediately say that the administration's lying and whatever. And so, and they did agree to that, and we had conversations the rest of the evening. I mean, the last one at one point was 1:30 in the morning. We were back up at 5:30 in the morning, and ultimately by late morning had an agreement, and they indeed did end up taking down the encampment just in time for the start of finals and for most of the commencement exercises. So, I mean, overall, it's, I mean, there's a lesson to me of the importance of dialogue. There is a lesson to me, though, also that it takes 2 to dance, if you will, that there had to be 2 willing partners to actually have a dialogue. And fortunately, in this case, there were. And so I give credit to the students who were involved in that and in those conversations. As you know, the next morning, so we had made invitations on Monday to not only that group, but also a Jewish student leader group that we had also talked with in the fall. It was during the Jewish holidays, and so they had said, look, we were happy to meet, but we don't want to meet till Thursday. So Thursday, that meeting occurred. We had a good conversation with them as well. And as you all saw, we published kind of what we saw to be the outcome of that meeting as well. So that's my report out, I guess, of what's happened in the last couple of weeks here. Not everybody's happy with it. That is something that is as personal and volatile as something like this. I'm sure it's impossible to have everybody happy with it. But I mean, in the totality of no violent incidents, no huge clashes, a campus reopened in time for finals and commencement, and the agreement to proceed with more civil dialogue and with a presentation, et cetera, this week, to me was a good outcome for the university.
Thank you, Interim President Ettinger. The floor is now open for questions. We have a little bit of time for questions for the president. I'll defer to Erin to call on people.
All right, Jerry, please go ahead.
So I just wanted to personally thank you for engaging in dialogue with the students. It would have been better, of course, to engage in dialogue before some were arrested. And, you know, I'm reminded from my earlier comments that Saturday represented the anniversary of the Kent State College shootings, and that on the 15th, we will have the anniversary of People's Park, which to me is more serious because I knew the people injured in that particular altercation. But I just wanted to hopefully get across that you were able to accomplish something important, and that engaging in dialogue with students is a good thing. And it's better than relying on police authority. And you said you referred several times to our police. And I have a long history of working collaboratively with police, but one thing that I haven't figured out yet is how our campus police, after working with the Minneapolis police for so many years, never mentioned anything about people like Derek Chauvin to any authorities during their interactions. So I'm a little suspicious of them in the long term as the ultimate authority as to whether we should engage police in activities against our own students, because they they still have things that make me question their total objectivity. But I do want to
30
thank you.
seconds remaining.
But I do want to thank you for engaging in that dialogue. And I know it wasn't easy, because it never is easy when you have people in conflict. But you were able to accomplish something, and it was worthwhile. And hopefully we can use that as a model for future engagements. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, next we have Katie Johnston Goodstar. Katie, you may turn on your camera and introduce yourself, and please go ahead with your question or comment. Katie?
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to turn on my video on this. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to turn on my video right now. My name is Katie Johnston Goodstar. I'm an associate professor in the Youth Studies program. There we go. And a longtime faculty senator from the School of Social Work in the College of Education and Human Development. And as a youth studies professor, I know that student-led protest has led to some of the greatest social and cultural transformations in our world. And I just wanted to cede some time. Are we at the point where we can cede some time? Are we being timed at this point?
In terms of asking your question, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say that at this point that that I truly believe that the students need to have time and space for their protest.
Katie, is that all, or did you have more, or are you done?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Michael Galope.
President Ettinger, thank you for that statement. I do understand how challenging this is. I think many of us, faculty included, have been dealing with the challenges in our classroom. I think one element that we didn't hear as much of in the story is just the academic environment, the learning environment, and how central dialogue is to maintaining a kind of moral leadership of the university. And so I just want to say, along with my colleague Jerry Cohen, I'm happy that we ended into that place where dialogue is what we model for the students, because a police solution is a violent solution. It is violence to arrest our students. One last note is that my family and I were part of a Shabbat on Friday for Jewish Voice for Peace. And I know there are a number of Jewish students who were not included in the meeting that you had with Jewish student groups. And I just want to say that, you know, there's a diversity of opinion among Jewish students, staff, and faculty on this issue. And I think it's important to just have that recognized so we don't slip into a kind of binary debate about this conflict. There's a great deal of complexity under the surface.
Understood. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, next we have Joan Blakey. Joan, please go ahead with your comment or question.
My question, I'm the director of the School of Social Work, and my question is about the police presence at graduation ceremonies. Are you, since that has been, an agreement has been made or reached, that is no longer the case, that where you're requiring units to have police presence at graduation? So can you speak to that?
I mean, our plan right now would be to proceed with what was put in place. I mean, we certainly have talked with our UMPD folks about trying to be unobtrusive, et cetera. And we're certainly hopeful that there's really no need ultimately for them to be there. We're still watching what's happening around the country. The students who we met with, definitely in good faith, at some point don't necessarily represent absolutely everybody. And so there is still a risk. We've been clear that, frankly, somebody walking across the stage with a flag or a free Palestine statement, is nobody's going to tackle them. That's not going to trigger an incident. But honestly, we would like to prevent what happened at University of Michigan over the weekend, where no one could hear the students' names because the interruptions were absolutely constant. And so, you know, my understanding is we're proceeding through this set of graduations that are going on. I've been to a couple of myself already. They've been wonderful. And yes, there's been police kind of in the wings or whatever. I'm not saying this is the future of graduations for the university, but for this year, I think the protocol will remain in place.
Last question.
Go ahead, Pavel.
Hi, President Eniger, Pavel Mróz from the medical school. I have a question about those students that were arrested the first day, that they appeared to be, you know, trespassing, versus the remaining of the students the following days that essentially committed the same trespassing. But the policy and the police action was somewhat inconsistently applied to the rest. So it appears that we have a group of about 9 students that may suffer whatever legal consequences because we applied policy somewhat inconsistently over essentially 48 hours. Is the university working with the whatever attorney for Minnesota or whoever to help explain or provide additional extenuating circumstances for the inconsistencies of applying policy and police actions for those 9 involved? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. It was both part of our conversation with the student group on the St. Paul campus last week, and honestly, you know, to your point, a sense of fairness even on our part, that we felt, okay, in the totality of things, you know, kind of why should not these 9 necessarily bear the brunt of what was a set of activities that a lot of people were engaged in. We have formally contacted the city attorney with our request that they look for a lenient way to address this, and we're waiting to hear how that turns out.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, President Ettinger. We appreciate your time here. We are out of time for this meeting. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
A second?
Yeah.
Second.
Thank you. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 99 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. We are adjourned, but please note that a second special meeting will begin immediately. I now call to order the special meeting of the Faculty Senate. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss and vote on a resolution from a group of several senators concerning student arrests after the protests in late April. I'll call on Professor Terry Caraway to present this item.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank our fellow senators for attending this special session. The 20 senators from across the university who co-sponsored this resolution know that it's a busy time of the semester, and we're grateful that you made the time to come here and discuss this important matter with us. So let us explain why we consider this matter to be so urgent. In our view, we are at a moment of crisis in higher education. Administrators around the country have shown an alarming willingness to call on the police to repress nonviolent protest. According to the AAUP, the American Association of University Professors, more than 2,000 students and faculty members have been arrested, often with disturbing force. These militarized responses not only needlessly endanger all of us, they also harm the university's educational mission and duty of care to its students. a university that cares about its students and that wishes to foster a climate in which people engage in dialogue rather than brute force to settle disagreements, does not call on the police and arrest our students when they collectively and peacefully express their concerns about the world. We have a duty as faculty senators, to uphold the educational values of the university and condemn such actions. Like many of you, the senators who sponsored this resolution were glad to see that our university's administration changed its approach last week and explored nonviolent means of engaging with our students. However, we think that it would be a mistake to declare that the administration's heavy-handed responses during the first week of the protests is just water under the bridge. We face a potentially dangerous future with respect to freedom of expression, with former President Trump openly calling for a military presence on university and college campuses to squash dissent. The administration's actions, they mobilized large numbers of police, including a SWAT team, against our students. See the timeline for photos and links to articles with more photos. And they arrested 9 people. This did real damage to our university community, and those actions should be condemned. But it would be a mistake to characterize this resolution as merely scolding the administration for its past actions. Protests will undoubtedly occur in the coming months, and future university administrators may be tempted to repress nonviolent protest as well. Because of this, our resolution is also forward-looking in that it calls for the administration to abstain from deploying the police against peaceful protesters and to develop, in dialogue with students, staff, and faculty, a policy that will prevent militarized responses to future peaceful protests. Today, we have an opportunity to declare that we, as faculty senators, support alternative, nonviolent responses to peaceful student protests. By supporting this resolution, we as a faculty senate send a strong message to the incoming president that we support negotiation and dialogue, not violence. Thank you, and I urge you to vote in favor of this resolution.
Thank you, Terry. The floor is now open for debate. If you have a comment or question, please raise your hand and send a chat to Erin Heath stating whether you're pro, con, or other. And also please refrain from sending her other chats so she can focus on the task. Erin will call on people in the appropriate order.
And Rakna, I just wanted to clarify that there will be 2 of my colleagues who will be assisting me with the discussion and the debate, and that will be Michael Galope and Jerry Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for that.
Okay, thank you, Rachna. So first we have Carrie Ann Terrell. Carrie Ann, please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shah. As a physician faculty member, I hold the safety of our students and colleagues to be of my highest priority, and this is why I'm in favor of this resolution. As an abortion provider, I have walked through lines of protesters saying heinous things who disagree with my work. As an LGBTQ person, I have crossed protesters to get to Pride to celebrate. People protest who I am and what I do. My experience does not diminish my respect for protesters' rights or their safety. Allowing our peaceful protesters to be advanced upon by police in SWAT gear, arresting them and sending them to jail does not reflect a commitment to safety. It reflects intolerance. Jail is not a safe place. It's not what we see on TV. Our arrested students will not be in quiet individual cells where they can reflect on their behaviors, their feelings. Bail is no longer affordable and it is not refunded. It was the university administration's use of police force which did not avoid violence, but rather introduced it. Breaking campus policy or rules generally does not result in arrest or arraignment. I want students to feel safe and supported while exploring and expressing their viewpoints. I want them to experience all sides of protest in a tolerant and safe space. My medical students are so full of heartfelt passion and compassion for others, those experiencing trauma, pain, war, famine. I do not want to be part of an institution that chooses to squelch their brave demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie Ann.
Okay, next we have Rosalind Chow. Rosalind said that she is other. Rosalind, please go ahead.
Thank you. I support the principle that calling police and involving SWAT teams and indiscriminately arresting students participating in peaceful protests should not have a place on university campuses. I would prefer that the objections specified in this letter describe general actions that we object to, rather than focusing on the university's actions during this past event on April 23rd. Since the interim president has shown the ability to learn from this event, and it'll be more productive to guide our incoming president on how we want the university to respond to future events of this type. For this reason, I move that we amend the motion as follows. I recommend that we remove I respectfully suggest that we remove the paragraph stated in reason 1 and replace it with a paragraph that specifies that peaceful student protests that pose no threat to the safety of people on campus, that do not substantially interfere with campus activities, and that do not cause willful destruction of property should be addressed first with dialogue and de-escalation strategies when needed. Students and faculty should be allowed to exercise their fundamental right to protest and peaceful activities. And these activities should not be met with extreme or militarized approaches, such as deployment of police and riot gear and SWAT teams, and indiscriminate and sometimes violent arrests. I also respectfully suggest that we remove the entire paragraph stated in reason number 2.
30 seconds.
And replace it with the following, saying that violation of university policy by nonviolent or non-willfully destructive actions, such as the creation of tent encampments, may be addressed in an appropriate manner, such as removal of tents by university police. However, students should not be subjected to disproportional, unreasonably punitive consequences in response to encampments, such as arrest, criminal charges, ban from campus, suspension, or expulsion. Thank you.
This is Senator Chow. I heard several different amendments proposed there. Do you have those in writing?
I do.
Okay, sponsors of the bill have an opportunity to consider those proposed amendments, and they need to be able to see them, and I'm not quite sure how we facilitate that. If the bill's sponsors wish to accept those amendments as friendly amendments, and sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Nancy Sims. I'm the parliamentarian for the Senate. If the sponsors wish to accept those amendments as friendly amendments, they are simply incorporated. If the sponsors do not wish to accept those amendments, then the body has to vote on each of the amendments separately and not actually on the amendments. We have a special rule in our rules that goes beyond the typical process for Robert's rules. So we have to vote first on whether to consider the amendment, and then we would have a vote on the amendment. Apologies there, but it looks like Amber has requested that she be sent a copy of your proposed amendments, and then Amber will be able to share it with people.
Sounds good. I will send it right away.
In the interests of time, I think it's possible, although I certainly defer to the chair on this, Professor Shah. If there is another speaker who does not have any amendments to propose, we could hear another speaker while the people sponsoring the bill are considering Senator Chow's proposals.
Perfect. I was just about to say that, Nancy. Thank you. So if there is anyone who is not proposing an amendment, but go ahead. Brandy, Erin, are you calling people or shall I?
Yes, I'm calling. So next is Brandy. Is it Blessed or Blessett?
Blessed.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brandy Blessed. I'm an associate professor at the Humphrey School, and I support this amendment. Students trained in our schools, departments, programs, and classes are taught about historical inequities, the ways for which oppression impacts social groups marginalized by society, and social movements that have occurred over time to fight against them. Professors through a variety of classes ask students to explore and interrogate policies related to international human rights law, as well as understanding of the sociology of ethnic and racial conflict. Yet when students take what they've learned in the classroom and apply it. The university administrators, their best response to student resistance, our students, was the use of force, or was to use force by the Minnesota Police Department, the same police department that is responsible for the death of George Floyd in 2020, and the same law enforcement agency that in 2023, the United States Department of Justice and the United States Attorney's Office in the District of Minnesota determined uses excessive force, including unjustified deadly force, and violates the rights of people engaged in protected speech. Peaceful protesting and resistance should not be undermined because the university administration sees it as a disruption. That indeed is the point of protesting, to disrupt the status quo, raise awareness, deepen consciousness, and instigate for change. This resolution is an attempt to first and foremost prioritize the care and concern of our communities, especially our students, recognize the importance of engagement and deliberation to facilitate opportunities to listen and learn, but to also advocate for the university to be a model of democratic principles, which it teaches in the classroom: compassion, dialogue, critical thinking, and conviction. This resolution is an attempt to ensure that the university does not use local law enforcement of any kind as a response to future acts of student resistance. And this resolution fundamentally seeks to avoid the erosion of the U's reputation, trust, and mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.
Okay, next we have Katie Johnston Goodstar, who is going to be ceding her time. Katie, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I will be ceding my time to Jasper Nordine, a student who was arrested.
Hello, I'm Jasper Nordine. I'm a senior here at the U in the history department, and I was one of the students arrested on April 23rd, and I was just asked to share our experience. So we set up the camp at about 4 a.m., and then police came about 6:30 and issued a dispersal warning. They initially would not tell us how long we had to take down the camp before arrest would begin. We had to press them to tell us 30 minutes. About 7 a.m., they started making arrests. We were handcuffed and put into a squad car and brought to Hennepin County Jail downtown. We were processed into the jail one at a time. So I was handcuffed in the back of the squad car for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Others who were processed after me were in there for upwards of an hour or more. In jail, we were separated into men's and women's cells after our bail was being processed. One of our friends, Sorka, is a trans woman, and she was kept in solitary confinement for the duration of our stay in jail because of that. We were there for about, I think, 9 hours in custody total. Police referred to other prisoners as human abortions in front of us. I'm trying to think of other things that happened. Our food was a single slice of bologna and a hamburger bun and an apple. And my fellow arrestees who arrived in the cell after lunch was served were not given any food or any water. We had one shared toilet in the cell that was in front of everyone, and maybe we were just stupid. We couldn't figure out how to flush it.
30 seconds.
And I just want to point out that President Ettinger made a comment about a desire to protect student safety. I can say that we all felt very safe, handcuffed in the back of a squad car. Thank you.
I would like to speak on, first of all, thank you, Jasper, for that horrific.
I'm sorry, Michael, we have a process we are following here, so you will get your turn. But thank you, Jasper, for sharing your horrendous story. I think we will return first to Senator Chow's amendment and consider where we go down that path. And then, Michael, on your turn, you will be called. Nancy, if
Sorry,
you're
I am speaking on behalf of the proposal in response to the amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you, Professor Chow, for this. I mean, I think everything you said, I very much agree with. And I think there's a lot of common spirit there. I think there's a wariness among the presenters to get into any kind of prescriptive policy making without having, you know, a lot of time to consider it. So we prefer to keep the language as is and not accept this and basically reject this, not have it as a friendly amendment, because we want it to narrowly respond to the historical events rather than, entertaining hypotheticals about potential situations.
Thank you, Michael, and my apologies. Other people who are speaking in support along with Terry, please identify yourself as saying as part of the proposal or original proposal. That would clarify our process.
I can say that.
I believe it's Terry, Michael, and Jerry. Is that right?
Yes.
Those are the three people who are speaking as those who put together the proposal. So with that, Senator Chow, do you want to make a motion to consider your amendments anyway?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to consider my amendment.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Then we need a vote of everybody who is a senator on, and this is, to be clear, this is not on the substance of Senator Chow's amendments. This is on whether to consider Senator Chow's amendments. Our rules default away from amendments from the floor. So this is a majority vote.
A point of parliamentary inquiry?
Yes.
Does a vote on this amendment have any ramifications for a senator's capacity to vote in any other way during this consideration of this motion?
No.
Okay.
It's not like we can tell who voted which way anyway, so.
Okay.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 62 ayes and 38 nays, the motion to consider the amendment does carry.
The next step here is to debate, to discuss the amendment. This is a little bit of a challenge since some of the people who have their hands up currently wish to discuss the original proposal, but I'm not exactly sure the best way to handle that on Zoom. What we've previously done in the past is just ask people to raise their hands again. Sorry, I'm also checking additional.
Yes, if I may suggest that those who want to speak to what was original before, to put your hands down for now, so that those who want to speak about the amendment may raise their hands. And then let me know if you are pro-con about that. And then we will move forward that way.
Complicating the matter is that I believe Professor Chow has put forth 2 amendments.
Okay.
Technically, under the rules, we're supposed to have voted separately about each of those. I don't know how much we want to get into the details there. I think, Professor Shah, this is something you could rule on, and also other people, if you feel passionately in objection to this. My suggestion would be to move forward with discussion of Professor Chow's amendments and then vote on the 2 amendments separately when we reach the end of discussion.
That sounds right to me, Nancy. It makes it smoother. So let's move forward with that.
The amendments are in the text from Amber, the chat message from Amber, Rosalind Chow's proposal, but perhaps those can be shared again.
Thank you. And so, Jerry, are you pro or con?
Well, I'm against the amendment and in favor of the original resolution.
Okay, since we are debating the amendment, then I will consider you as con. Please go ahead.
So my main complaint about this addition, other than the fact that it implies establishing a policy, which is not really what we intended to do, is the part that says peaceful activities should not be met with extreme and militarized approaches such as deployment of police and riot gear and SWAT teams and indiscriminate and sometimes violent arrests. That I interpret as meaning that it would be okay to have police who are not so militarized and not so dressed to respond to our students, and I object to that concept of having students arrested even by police who are not in SWAT team uniforms. That's all. So that causes me to want to reject the wording that is suggested. Thank you.
Okay, and then so to be clear, the next one, Sonali Pawa will also be con. And just to confirm, we are speaking about the first part of the first amendment, or the first part of the amendment. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The part that bothers me is the very first line of the first proposed amendment: peaceful student protests that pose no threat to the safety of people on campus, do not substantially interfere with campus activities, etc., should be addressed with dialogue, right? Protests by definition interfere with campus activities. That's why they are protests, right? So I think this leaves open a lot of leeway for protests to be clamped down upon, because they by their very nature interfere with campus activities, and that's what they're meant to do. So I'm afraid I do not see this as a friendly amendment, and I would be against it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I see Aaron Cornfield. Aaron, are you okay? It looks like you are a con as well. Please go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Aaron Corfield. I'm a senator from medical school. I just think it's really important to keep the context of why this resolution came up and not remove the historical concept of where this resolution is coming from. I think that's a really important thing to add to this discussion and to this resolution as we move forward. Also, it just seems to leave a lot of leeway, just as Senator Cohen was saying, there's a lot of leeway for the police who are not in SWAT gear to be able to arrest whatever student they want for whatever protest conduct that they deem fit to be arrestable for.
Okay, so next we have Jeremiah Mans. Jeremiah has expressed other perspective. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is, I think this is sort of an other comment. I just think it's important that everyone who is considering how they want to vote on this amendment and on the overall statement consider, as has been suggested in the Chronicle of Higher Education, that when we consider these cases, we consider both protests that might be of a type that we might agree with the underlying mission for, and protests that we might find, very things we don't want. Would we be equally happy with the same kind of response to, for example, what happened in Charlottesville, if this was white supremacists versus if this is? It's important that when we think this through, we think about this in a way that we don't set up a policy that then allows other activities that we are, that we would really be very concerned about. So we just need to think about this carefully when we're writing in this statement.
Thank you. In interest of time, one last comment from Michelle.
Hello. Thank you, Jeremiah. That was really, really interesting. I mean, here's what I think really quickly. Dr. Chow, is the purpose of the amendment to not make the purpose of the amendments to not make the proposal specific, because I think that if that is, this sort of helps with Jeremiah's question as well. I think the historical specificity of the moment and the reason for the quote unquote protest or the encampment on Monday, the 22nd, and the arrest, I think it's important. I think we've learned that from reportage from past protests too. So, I mean, I understand that, but I believe that is important. So I am against Putting the amendments.
Thank you, everyone, for all the comments. Just to be very clear, what we are going to do here is vote on the amendments to the original draft. There were 2 amendments that were made. We will vote separately, even though we had a discussion on both of them together. Amber, will you please initiate the poll for amendment number 1?
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 31 ayes and 62 nays, this motion does not carry. Say a second.
Please initiate the second poll for amendment number 2.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 29 ayes and 65 nays, this motion also does not carry.
Thank you, Amber. The motion to consider the amendment fails. We will now continue debate on the resolution as written.
Okay, first we have Eric Schwartz. Eric, please go ahead.
My video is disabled. Do you intend it to be disabled?
Here, I'll ask you to start your video. Let's try
Okay.
again. There you go.
All right, very good. Okay. I want to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, and I believe you have it, so you'll be able to post it. With great respect and with thanks to the sponsors of the resolution, I want nonetheless to offer this amendment in the nature of a substitute, which I hope might be treated as a friendly amendment by the sponsors. Let me first say that I have long been a vocal critic of the subjugation of the Palestinian people by the government of Israel. I strongly supported and spoke on behalf of the University Senate resolution sponsored by the students on a Gaza ceasefire. I authored this month a piece in a Washington, D.C. publication, The Hill, urging that aid to Israel be linked to human rights, and I've met with and made this very same points to the Biden administration. So I am in great sympathy with many of the goals of the protests and the sponsors of the motion. But especially in light of the university's negotiation with the protesters, I'm concerned that the resolution sends the wrong message and is unequivocal in ways that create discomfort for me. I'm concerned that it doesn't mention fears that Jewish students have collectively articulated, and I want us to make clear that we will treat these fears the way concerns of other minority populations might be addressed. My
30
substitute
seconds.
is shorter and less condemnatory, but makes points similar to those of the original resolution about de-escalation, about dismissing criminal penalties against those not engaged in violence, and about not acting precipitously to engage law enforcement, regardless of time, place, and manner restrictions. But it seeks to do so in a way that encourages the administration on the path they're beginning to take, and in a way that recognizes that all communities should feel safe and secure. And the amendment in the nature of a substitute is posted in full, so you all can see it.
Do the authors want it to be friendly, just to clarify?
Haven't been able to read the whole thing yet, so it's hard to tell.
Perhaps if there is another speaker who doesn't have an amendment to propose, we could do the same thing we did previously and give the proposers of the original motion a moment to look at the amendments and determine if they'd like to accept them as friendly or not, and have another speaker in the meantime.
Okay, we can do that. First we have Jennifer McGuire. Jennifer is pro. Jennifer, please go ahead. And again, this has to do with the original resolution.
I'm Jennifer McGuire. I'm a professor in family social science and an extension specialist in the Department of Family Health and Wellbeing. I support this proposal predominantly because I would like to see a clear policy come out of it in the future about how and when police outside of the university police can be engaged with our students. I was heartened to see the improved approaches after the beginning of the week by Edinger and the rest of the administration, but it still concerns me that there's not a clear delineation of when and how outside campus police would be involved with our students. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Eric, is it Degray?
Dig.
Dig, okay, Eric is also pro. Eric, please go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm a senator from English Department in CLA. Speaking in support of the resolution. I want to make 3 points. Number one, this resolution is about how we see students, past students, and what the values of the university are. So the U's leadership to a restorative approach feels weak because campus bans were not lifted for 2 of the arrestees, 2 individuals who are no longer enrolled as U students, even though they were recently students and have UMN email addresses. In addition, if U leadership were willing to take a more internal restorative approach, that should have been done as a first course of action, not criminalizing students first and then hoping to decriminalize them later. Second point, this resolution is about faculty governance, or at the very least, faculty involvement. Top-down militarized responses are still happening across the country. This resolution can send a strong message to the incoming president that this sort of response is unacceptable. Yes, we are glad that the administration changed course somewhat. Again, the 2 non-student U students are still banned, and we express gratitude for that in our resolution. But we also think that faculty senators can help U leadership meet its commitments and deepen those commitments regarding criminal and disciplinary charges by including them in this resolution. And point 3, this resolution is about academic freedom. As we heard from Jasper, police arrest is violent.
30 seconds.
University leadership needs to model nonviolent responses, especially when it's difficult, conflictual, high stakes, but in particular, when it's peaceful. Peaceful protests on campus should never be met with academic censorship, political repression, police violence, and jail time. Bad for students, that's bad for teachers, bad for campus climate and EDI, bad for academic freedom, and bad for democracy. This is an urgent matter for the future of higher education.
Have the original authors been able to review this?
Yes, we finally did.
Would
And
you like to consider it a friendly amendment?
no, we do not. I think the main reason is that we think it's important if we as a collective faculty senate are going to send a strong message to the incoming administration. We can't just treat what happened as water under the bridge, that there also needs to be some sort of criticism of the past actions as well. So I don't see any language that is critical at all of the damaging the actions that the administration took. And I think that's an important part of the work that we need to do here together. And I think it's our responsibility to say so as faculty senators, that the behavior was inappropriate. At the same time, recognizing that we applaud the president for changing track. That wasn't easy. It models a much more appropriate way to respond to these to student protests, but it doesn't magic away the harm that was done. Quite frankly, I don't think it's going to send a very strong signal if we don't have the stomach to send that signal to the administration.
So this is the same process as with Professor Chow's proposed amendments. Professor Schwartz, do you want to make a motion to consider your amendments despite them not being considered as friendly amendments? Sorry, you're muted. You remuted yourself.
Yes, I would. And a point of parliamentary inquiry, what is there any additional opportunity I have to speak on behalf of the amendment, or have I used my time essentially?
If the body votes to consider your amendment, you could speak on it again, I believe.
Okay.
Do we have a second to Professor Schwartzen? All right. Then we proceed to the body voting. Again, this is not on the substance of the amendment, but the body gets to vote on whether to consider the amendment.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 39 ayes and 54 nays, this motion does not carry.
Then we returned to discussion of the original proposal.
Okay, so next we have Emily Beck. Emily is pro original, so please go ahead, Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Beck, and I'm the Associate Curator of the Wangenstein Historical Library of Biology and Medicine, and I'm pro on this resolution for a few reasons, including the historical context of policing in the Twin Cities and what that shared history means in situations on campus. Because of our local context, we know already what could happen when police are called to protest. Many of us carry within us that weight of these challenging relationships between police and civilians. For many, the mere presence of police is a tangible threat of violence that the university itself claims to not tolerate from its community. This needs to be factored into the risk that we understand that when we choose to how to react to policy infringements. The risk of deploying police on campus is enormous, and the risk from encampments are minimal. We can be confident that protests will happen in the future, and in fact, I would argue one of our roles as educators is to ensure that we're empowering students to use their knowledge and resources to live out their morals. A method many of them will choose to do so is through demonstrations like these encampments. Regardless of what students and other members of our community are raising their voices about, the administration needs to know that lives hang in the balance. I'm pro on this resolution because I hope that it sends a signal to the current and future administrations that a police presence carries a threat of violence that is unacceptable unless absolutely necessary, and that curiosity, conversation, and empathy will bring us closer to mutual understanding and hopefully repair and resolution. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And next we have Alicia Cohen, who has another perspective. Alicia, please go ahead.
Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm for or against the resolution at this point, because I've lost track of the link on it. But I share some of the concerns that Professor Schwartz had with the original resolution, and that I want to make sure that we keep students at the center of our critique and moving forward. And my concern is that it wasn't just simply Jewish students who were concerned during, and I'm not saying the resolution speaks to this, but broadly, I think it's important for the record that both Jewish students were concerned, not that the protests were unpeaceful, they were peaceful, but what the rhetoric was out there was not. And I appreciated the earlier comments from the person from the medical school who talked about the First Amendment and her role. Similarly, I thought that I wanted to share with this body that some of our Muslim students in the College of Liberal Arts, where I'm a senator, and the journalism school were concerned about coming to campus and being associated with the protests. They were concerned about profiling and their safety on campus as well. So overall, the campus is better off now that there has been engagement, and I support that. And I'm just concerned that this resolution isn't kind of prescriptive in the way that the Professor Schwartz's was, and kind of advising that we need engagement to go first. And that was what was
30 seconds.
And I can't imagine a situation where if students were blocking the doors to my building or other things, interfering with the act of student work, where we might need some sort of intervention. And so it's that kind of that situation that I'm wrestling with, and I'm sure others are here as well. And so I just wanted to raise these issues for this body.
Thank you, Senator Cohen. Given the time, we will proceed to a vote after Senator Gaynor. Go ahead.
Hello, Shir Ganol, Assistant Professor in History. I'd like to address, first of all, I support the resolution, and I want to say a few words that will maybe also address some of the amendments that were suggested by Senator Schwartz, namely the concern that that protests and the encampment created an unsafe environment to some students, specifically to Jewish students, while the protesters expressed political views that some find hurtful and offensive and even disturbing. They did not pose threat to student safety, and they did not amount to harassment of students based on ethnic, religious, or racial background. And it is true that many students, Jewish and non-Jewish, find the message of the protests troubling. Nevertheless, the response cannot translate to a crackdown on peaceful protesting. And I also want to point that accepting the claim that the protests inherently threaten the safety of Jews on campus is wrong, and I think it also is potentially harmful. It falsely brands the protests as violent. It invalidates them in the process because it suggests that the protesters pose a threat to Jews and associates all the protesters with anti-Semitism, which is a menacing form of violence. And this claim also assumes that Jews stand on one side of this political issue,
30
which is
seconds.
false. I spoke to many Jewish students who took part in the protests, and they participated in the encampment from the very beginning. And they stated that if anything made them feel unsafe, it was the police presence, it was the arrests, and it was the administration's initial response to the protests. And these students also resented the administration's statements that publicly portrayed the protest as a threat to Jewish students. And they felt doubly erased by that. They felt erased in their political activism and in their Jewishness. I'd like to warn the Senate against taking that position. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for a robust debate and conversation. We will now proceed to a vote. No second is needed, and a simple majority is required to approve. Just to be clear, we are voting on the original amendment, original resolution that was proposed by Terry and colleagues.
Rachna, can I ask one question quickly?
Okay.
As a presenter of the resolution, can I say anything at all before the vote, just to respond to Professor Cohen very briefly?
I think that's a parliamentarian question. I'll see if what.
I don't know for sure I don't want to take a vote on it or anything, but if it's my right as the presenter to do it, it would only take 30 seconds.
I think it's actually, I hate to do this, but I think it's actually your call, Professor Shah. The typically, given the time limits, it would be appropriate to move on to the vote at this point.
Terry, I am so sorry. Is it okay if we move on?
Of course, it's okay. I would prefer to say what I want to say, but I understand the position you're in.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I do not want to give you more time when, we did not give time to other people. So in interest of fairness, we will proceed to a vote. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 63 ayes and 29 nays, that motion carries and the resolution is approved.
Thank you, everyone. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Amber, please initiate a poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 86 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.